Good morning again. I am happy to see in our room the person who will open our today's event and our discussion. So we have Katerina Maternova, EU Ambassador to Ukraine. She will give a welcoming speech at our wonderful conference where we will talk about the energy sector, which is the driver and before the war, during the war, and also it will be the driver in the post-war recovery of Ukraine. So I would like to give the floor to Katerina Maternova, and we are very grateful to her for agreeing to speak and open our today's conference. Good morning, everyone. It is true that the energy sector is the driver of pre-war, wartime, and post-war period.
We just reminisced with Alexander how days after the full-scale invasion, we in fact moved to integrate the electricity grid of Ukraine and Moldova with the continental grid, something that didn't happen just by itself. There was a lot of work, a lot of reforms, a lot of regulatory changes that happened before that. There was a little bit of a technical hesitation, but it was something that we were striving for. And Mr. Putin made it easier by severing Ukraine from the Soviet grid, and the integration happened. This is just an example of really the transformative changes that Ukraine went through. So let me a little bit reflect on how we see the energy sector in general. What are the main issues that the European Union works on, and what I see as the potential for development. Ukraine's energy sector is severely tested. I mean, you know that a lot better than I do. I just read in online or in newspapers about, second hit on Tripilska, or attacks on gas storages, or on transmission lines, and the various parts of the energy system I can't even name. And we have collectively provided a lot of assistance. In fact, the European Union, to the tune of over 3 billion euros since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and that's not counting the lifeline of the interconnection of the electricity system. We have reverse flows, as you know, on gas, and we have been providing both support for rebuilding of a lot of the energy, plus a lot of the autonomous whether generators or even taking apart piece by piece the Vilnius thermal power plant and bringing it piece by piece, and now it being stored and fortunately not destroyed in Tripilska and not touched by the last attack. So it actually can be used for the important spare parts. So I think the recovery of the energy system is something that we have been concentrating on a lot. We did it very closely with the US and other donors. We had this energy Rammstein in the old times when Jeff Bayet was still in the administration. Now perhaps there is a little bit less of a cohesion in the coordination, but still there is a lot of support. There is a lot of support coming. Ukraine is blessed by the overcapacity in two areas that was built during the Soviet times, perhaps even prior to Soviet times. One is railway, and one is the energy system. So you would, under normal circumstances, be certainly a net exporter huge magnitude, and that's something that helped keep the lights on and the heat on during the severely tested winters. We are ahead of a new one. I think you know better where we are. I think that without major targeted attacks, Ukraine will do fine, but more attacks are likely to come, so it's a little bit like crystal balling. But the emergency support is something that in energy we have been concentrating on a lot, and we will continue. There was a little bit last year when at the YES conference was a discussion on energy. This year I went to the rule of law one, but last year in the energy discussion I was saying there is talk about distributed and decentralized energy sources and the need to build it. And last year I mentioned we lost a year in that, and there were these dreams of, 400 megawatts plants, etc. I think that we have overcome. Those dreams a little bit, and I think that there is a lot more energy now put into really going after both renewables and smaller energy sources, and we very much endorse that. So emergency response is one area where we spend a lot of energy, pun intended. But I think the most important one for the future of Ukraine and its energy sector is the second big area that we concentrate on, and that's reforms, market liberalization, market coupling on the energy sector, continued reforms in the gas sector, building of the truly independent regulator. All of these areas are something that we are in active discussions. There are many issues that are very difficult to tackle during the war, such as the very expensive PSO obligations, etc. But it's something that we need to work on, and for the energy sector of the future to be truly competitive, one needs to go through these reforms. So that's something that we conduct as a reform dialogue. In fact, the adoption of the various legislation and building of the institutions is part of the Ukraine facility and the Ukraine plan. So there are actually financial rewards, in a sense, attached to different bits of the legislative regime. One of them coming in the fall of this year, and others in the years to come. So this is something that we will continue paying attention to, which leads me to the third area where we are involved quite a bit, and that's investment, and that support to the diversification and the decentralization and distribution of energy sources, energy transmission, whether it's gas, whether it's electricity. You probably have heard about the Pillar 2 of the Ukraine facility, which provides guarantees to our IFI, to our international financial institution colleagues. We have a major program with the BRD called HIBAR, where we provide hundreds of millions in guarantees for private sector projects, as well as SOE type of investments. We have another program with the BRD on de-risking renewable energy investments. We have a major program with IFC that can benefit energy projects. So this is something that is out there. We ask our partners to make clear that when they use our guarantee, they make it clear to their customers and clients that their investment is enabled by European Union guarantee. And in addition to that, we continue investing in also the energy sector that's owned by the state. We are going to be giving we are enabling major emergency loans for emergency purchase of gas by Naftogaz, but also have been enabling a lot of the investments in Ukrenergo and the various OBL and Ukr different parts of the alphabet of the energy systems. So emergency support, reforms, market integration, and investments is really the three areas that we concentrate on. And I'm delighted to speak here because I'm a great believer in evidence-based policymaking. So actually having Boston Consulting look at the sector and study what makes sense and which direction to go is the right way to do. And I wish you to have a fruitful and productive and informative conference today. Дуже дякую. Слава Україні!
Героям слава! Дуже вам дякуємо, Катерина.
Thank you very much, Ms. Katerina. And I would like to give the floor now to Alexander Kubrakov and our speakers from the BCG group who will talk about the current situation and future potential of the area. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Katerina. She has said many important things, and I agree with all those things. So first of all, I would like to say that today is the anniversary of our non-governmental organization. So it is the first year of our official work. Of course, we have been cooperating with one another for many more years. We know each other for longer, but that's our official anniversary, the first one. The second thing is that we were able to recover after the recent attack. You can see some kind of still some trace of the attack, but we had all the windows which were shattered and the walls were damaged, but now it looks more or less normal. So as for the energy sector, this sector is very important because it impacts all the economy, because we see that if the price for the energy is high, then the companies stop working, they wrap up their operation, and vice versa. When the price goes down, the economy is more active. And we understand that, of course, we have to deal with the attacks on energy infrastructure. We try to protect the relevant infrastructure objects. Sometimes it works effectively, sometimes not really. Sometimes physically it is not possible to protect certain things, and of course the enemy would try to take advantage of that. But thanks to the support of the European Commission, we have investment into the green energy, and we see the project pipeline for gigawatts. So we see 200 megawatts, 200 megawatts, different projects, and like in total it would give more than 4 gigawatts. And if we talk about solar plants and other alternative sources, we know that about 1.5 gigawatt which is used in that sector, and I think that we could all feel it this summer when we talk about this distributed generation and solar energy. So this sector is really very interesting, and we will have two panel discussions today to talk about gas and heating market and the electricity market. So we will talk about why there are investments or there are no investments, and how ready players are for integration with the European market. Thank you, Alexander, and I would like to give the floor to Balint Silhavi, Senior Expert at BCG in Central and Eastern Europe.
Do you hear us? Good morning.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I hope you can also hear me.
Thank you very much for being with us today, and we're looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Perfect. Let me share my screen. Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
Not. Yes, we can.
Perfect. So, welcome everyone. Good morning, and I'm really happy to be here. As was mentioned in the introduction, my name is Balint Silhavi. I'm a principal at BCG, and I was working with Mr. Kubrakov and the team last year to develop the future economic vision of Ukraine. We looked at 2040, and the energy sector, of course, is one of the key pillars of that one, and happy to introduce our finding on that. So very, very briefly on the project overall, and then let's go into the energy sector. So overall, we wanted to come up with an economic vision that not only elevates the economic contribution and output of Ukraine, but also lifts the general well-being of the Ukrainian population. What we looked at it was rather focused on improving the economy, but also was widespread. We looked at all the key sectors of the economy. We did not only look at it from our ivory tower, but we talked to a lot of experts in the fields. We talked to over 300 people to get their views on this and co-developed it. We developed an overall view, and we also developed a sector-wide view, quite in depth for the key sectors of the economy, and also broke it down by regions to make it even more tangible. As mentioned, there were a couple key sectors highlighted. Of course, there is not a super big surprise what could be the leading economic sectors going forward for the Ukrainian economy. There are a couple that might be upcoming, but there are a couple of strongholds. Energy is definitely one of those. Energy was a bit tricky in the sense that this is not only like a productive economic sector if you think about oil and gas production and power production, but it's also one of the biggest enablers of any economic activity in the country. So therefore it was always like a two-lens view that we took at this, that there is a level of energy output that is required for the economy, and there is also opportunities for export later on. But then let's deep dive into the energy. So a bit of a history when we think about what could be the strategy and the future vision for the energy sector. Where are we starting from? Ukraine was one of the most energy-intense economies in the world. 25 years ago, it was over twice of the usual European peers. It was on a heavily decreasing trajectory, which meant quite a big improvement, and it was also coupled with real GDP growth. So actually there was a decrease in energy consumption and still an increase in GDP production, therefore like doubling the impact on the energy density drop. Although in the last 10-15 years, it leveled off a bit. And if we look at the primary energy consumption in the country, you can see this leveling off in the last 10 years. But what you don't see is any structural changes to the energy consumption. There was a decrease in the level, but not in the mix of what the country was consuming. And then came the full-scale invasion, which changed kind of everything. There was already a need for an energy sector reform and a new strategy going forward, and a lot of investments missing from the system. Now, as you all know, most of the power generation capacities were under attack, at least attacked, some of them even destroyed or occupied. So this even elevates the need that we need to rebuild and we need to think about how the future of the energy sector should look like, because now is the time that you can think through and even change things that were there since the 60s. So how a future energy sector should look like. Now a lot of countries over the last 2, 3, 5 years went through this thinking, like how should the future energy sector look like? The European energy crisis was a big ignition point for that. Everyone started with the energy trilemma. I'm pretty sure everyone in the room now heard of this. 5 years ago, there were a handful of people talking about this. So there is always the thinking about energy security, affordability, and sustainability. And you need to find your balancing point, and that balancing point between the three for every country is a bit different. For Ukraine, where you are right now, energy security and affordability are the top priorities for the short and mid-term. Long-term sustainability also comes in. Although, fortunately, given we have to rethink quite a lot of things, we can even try to advance all three legs at the same time. So how the future energy mix could look like. And this view, what you see here, is for the economic vision that we have put together. So it's also considering all the other changes in the other sectors, because energy is a key enabler. But what you see is that there is a massive drop in energy consumption from 21 to 22, and we only expect the final energy consumption to grow back to similar levels by 2040. This might be even a bit aggressive, but this is what we see. And the other big change that you see here is the growing importance of the electricity. From the 15, 20, below 20% of electricity share in the final energy mix, we expect this to grow around 30%. And that is even gonna be on the lower end of what we see across Europe. Most countries expect even higher share of electricity. This growth in electricity consumption is gonna be coming with some decrease in the share of gas and a substantial decrease in the share of coal. Coal essentially is becoming more of an enabler of industrial processes rather than the part of the energy system. So let's do a quick deep dive on the oil first, and then let's go into the power, as those are because the oil is a bit tricky. The overall oil consumption, we don't expect to decrease a lot. There is going to be some decrease, but not a lot. But there is a substantial shift in the actual fuel consumption and the fuel mix. Previously, 15% of the fuel consumption was coming from LPG. That is very, very high, much higher than what you see anywhere else in Europe. We expect that share to decrease substantially. And mostly because that LPG was coming over 90% from Russia. To eliminate any Russian reliance in fuels, we need to cut back on LPG. There is already proven ways on how to cut back on LPG consumption, because there are other ways to power cars. The other big change, as we discussed, is going to be the growing share of the electricity in the final mix. How to enable that? We need to build a lot of new generation capacity. It was also evident that the generation mix will need revitalization, and there were a lot of new potential, mostly in renewables. Now we need to double down on that one. And on the left side you can see how we expect the generation mix to evolve over the next 15-25 years. The big change is gonna be the growth in gas-fired generation and the growth in renewable generation capacities. Although we all know that the growth in renewable generation capacities is not one-to-one linked with the share of renewables in the electricity mix. And on the right-hand side, you can see how actually the power mix we expect to come together. Nuclear to remain the backbone shortly. Above that, there is going to be an increase in the share and importance of power produced from gas-fired sources. But later on, this is going to be offset and replaced by renewable power, namely wind and solar. but the gas assets that we put in the system is gonna be there to improve system stability and balancing. And as you can see, for the next at least 15, 25 years, 20 years, we still expect Ukraine to remain a net importer. And if you want to go back to the net exporter position that was traditionally Ukraine's view on the energy mix, then it might come after 24, but not really before that. An important note on the renewables and like small-scale gas-fired plants. This decentralization, which we also heard in the very good keynote that kicked us off like 10 minutes ago. This is not only a cost play and sustainability play, as for most of the countries, but here it's important for system and national security as well. It's much easier to defend and keep running a system that is running on decentralized generation compared to one that is fully centralized. But will this be competitive going forward? Fortunately, Ukraine is pretty strong on the basics and pretty strong in resources. And you can see most of the generation mix is going to be coming from nuclear. That's competitive. It's going to be coming from wind onshore. That's also very competitive. And solar PV. That is also very competitive. All of these are below the average power prices. All of these resources can produce electricity below the usual power price that we seen in 23. That means that the competitiveness of the energy mix is going to be decreasing. It's going to be increasing, sorry. So let's really look at competitiveness in comparing Ukraine to the other countries in the region. As discussed, we don't expect Ukraine to go back to being a net exporter right away, but if we build up enough capacity going forward, we might become again a net exporter beyond 24. On the power price competitiveness within the region, as a net importer, until 40-45, Ukraine will see power prices mostly around the top quartile of what we see in the CEE region. To become more competitive and in this regard and go below that, we need to become at least evolve into a net exporter position or a position where our competitive sources can provide enough power for the industry. But how much will this cost? That's always the big question because everyone can dream big. So overall, what we estimated, and this is last year, so have to take it with a pinch of salt. We looked at it and it costs around 200 billion. This 200 billion contains a lot of investments in the power sector. You can see mostly for new generation or new generation sources or revamping generation sources. But there is also a massive need for grid enhancement. While the grid itself is quite robust, it will need some modernization to deal with the future electricity mix. To a smaller degree, we also need investments into the oil and gas sector. Oil, definitely to improve the refurbish and restate the refining capacities. Probably not all of them, but at least Kremenchuk, that should be a top priority. And also diversifying the crude sourcing that the country can do. And also investing in increasing domestic production. For gas, this is mostly the investments needed to increase domestic production and to really kick off like a commercial gas market, wholesale gas market that can validate further investments in the country. But what you see here is that while the price tag is high, this is not fully like a state-backed investment. This shall be a combination of state, international institutions, and also private sector investments. And that's a good thing because the energy sector and even the renewables, that is even higher on this list, is generally one of the highest in foreign direct investment share. Oil and gas production downstream as well was traditionally very high on this list, given the high margins that it can achieve. Renewables now is even topping that. So having the right regulation and the right environment in place can enable quite a lot of private market-based investments into the sector. And just to close it all, what is our vision for the energy sector going forward in a 15-25 year? We expect the Ukraine's energy sector to emerge from the conflict as a more resilient, decentralized system, which is building back into a competitive advantage for the economy. This will take around 200 billion in investments, a combination of private and public funds. In the oil sector, it's really about diversification and both in crude sourcing, let it be domestic or imports, and also getting back the refining capacities and upgrading the refining capacities and capabilities in the country. In the gas, it's really about, again, diversifying the sourcing and securing sourcing while also being smart on how much gas you are using in the country. In the power sector, this is rebuilding the generation portfolio in a more advantageous, future-looking setup. And if there is a market potential and appetite for that, Ukraine can still have a lot of opportunities in these more futuristic, low-carbon investments like hydrogen and biomethane. Ukraine has the potential to be a key player in Europe in those sectors as well, but those are less imminent investments, but probably a good growth opportunity for the future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Selhavi. Thank you for your vision, very precise numbers, and great analysis. And I think there are lots of things to discuss from what you have presented. And today we're focusing on the gas market and on electricity market. So hopefully we'll have a chance to provide some comments on your presentation as well. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Ми закінчили з презентаціями, зараз з вами переходимо безпосередньо до...
So we are done with the presentation and now we start our panel discussion, and I think that it will be a logical continuation of those key moments which were presented by Ms. Katarina and Mr. Balind and Alexander Kubrakov. I think that we are all thinking about what is going to happen with the gas market and electricity market in the nearest 12 months and also in the long-term perspective. So I would like to invite our wonderful panelists, Evgeny Bondarenko, Executive Director, DTEC, Oil and Gas. I hope that Mr. Bondarenko is with us. I say good morning, please join us. Alexey Zayets, CEO, Smart Energy Group. Good morning, Alexey. Oleg Khomenko, Ukrainian Agribusiness Club. Alexander Slobozhan, Executive Director of the Association of Ukrainian Cities. Happy to see you, Alexander. Andriy Bычkov, Director of Sokar Trading House. And Andriy Kobolev will join us in 10 minutes, as far as I know. So we have a wonderful gender representation today. Yeah, so we have kind of a balance, right? So what I would like to say is that I would like to have a real discussion. today. So we do not want to have a presentation like they have in the Cabinet of Ministers. Let us talk about how things really are and what your expectations are in the nearest 6 to 12 months. What is going to happen with the market? What are the threats that you see? One of the questions that I have, one of the concerns is, I see that sometimes the war is used when as an argument not to implement some reforms. So I would like to have two parts of our panel discussion. First, I would like you to talk about your vision of the gas and heating market, about the challenges that you see, the threats that you encounter, and the global vision that you have. Like, where do you see Ukraine in the European gas market? So what should we strive for? What prospects do we have? And what are the challenges that we face? So who would like to play the role of the pioneer? Who would like to be the first to speak, or should I decide as a moderator? Okay, no volunteers. Ms. Victoria, I can start. Oh, so Andriy has joined us, so it has not been 10 minutes, so I'm sure that all of you know him. So we have Andriy Yakobolev with us. Say good morning. We have the Association of Ukrainian cities, and I think that you all read the report of the European Commission, and so it is that we can have so we have Alexander Slobozhan, Executive Director of the Association of Ukrainian Cities, and we have now the debt of 67 billion hryvnias. That is not a new issue, not a new problem, and we see not just stagnation but degradation of those enterprises which work in gas and heating. So we tried to introduce clearing, and now there was a proposition of 45 billion kind of as operation to make sure that Naftogaz would use not to leave us without gas and heating, but now the risks are possible sanctions for the enterprises, which will lead to those enterprises not operating. So why do we have this situation? Because the tariffs are not economically justified, even when certain money go directly to Naftogaz, when consumers are paying, still it does not resolve the situation. The second thing is that there are communities with co-generation facilities and alternative energy sources. They are not competitive, and we see stagnation again. And that is a huge problem. But also, we have our national regulator who should make sure that tariffs are justified. So they tried to do something about the water supply, but so without water, we would not be able to have the proper heating supply, and they offered, for example, if consumers have debts, to kind of cut supply to them. But the ministry said that it would not work. And like in Kharkiv, for example, there would be a huge issue with that. And now there has been a huge discussion like about the responsibility and how such situations can be confirmed, like who should decide who is cut off. And for example, Kharkiv, they have 15 billion hryvnias of debts. Now you have all seen the draft state budget, and this difference in subventions is again this 15 billion hryvnias. But who will get this money? That is the question. And there should be 4% of in personal income tax, and it had to actually go to a different purpose. So without those enterprises, if they do not operate, there will be no one to pay for the gas. If we have no one to pay for the gas, well, I do not know what is going to happen. Of course, gas can be sold to someone else, but then we would have no water and no heating. So what we suggested to close the gap in tariffs, and there could be different options. We think that the proposal of the Naftogaz about dividends and clearance, so that should be work well. Then we would finally have economically justified tariffs, and that would be contractual relations between economic entities without preferences and subsidies. Another option is to engage courts, because if we allow to do some operations and cut off someone without the decision of court, so that can lead to the disruption of the market, because for example, if someone can do something without any court decisions, it will lead to lack of protection for those who depend on this entity. And the parliament in 2022, they approved the law of Ukraine, number 2479, that there will be a direct assistance in case of destroyed infrastructure, that there would be protection of the critical infrastructure for the wartime period, and that the debt that is created because of the tariffs would also be covered from the state budget. But the situation that we currently see is quite different. So those are the problems that I see. Thank you, Alexander. You started with a very painful topic, and so far we do not. We do see these problems, and I saw that Andrei Kobolev was responding to what you were saying, so we want to have a discussion, and I hope that you will share your comments. Yeah, I am sorry for how I look. I just came from the train because we had this trip within the Second Wind project, and where we participate with the veterans. And of course, I do respect thermal generation enterprises, but I have been working with the gas sphere, and when thermal enterprises stop buying gas from us, that would be a big joy for us. We will just organize a party and invite you to say goodbye, just goodbye. We will never see each other again, because those enterprises are the most problematic category of consumers, and here I agree with Victoria. Unfortunately, as a country, we look as people who try to resist, but like resist the mold, because we try to deal with the mold, but the mold is not the source of the problem. It is the humidity, because the mold is this post-Soviet heritage that we have, and some issues in the work of local authorities, sometimes national, but mostly local. Because for example, see the mayor of Zhytomyr, and he introduced her and did a real miracle with the gas situation without like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. So he implemented an effective solution in Zhytomyr locally. But unless we talk about this problem and plan for the nearest years, and if we stop considering heating as just something that the state gives, but see heating as a commercial product. So unless it happens, we will not see that the situation changes. When we think that we have to provide heating to all the people, and that's just our obligation, so we will never see a change situation. And if we talk to a Western analyst, for example, they will say that it's some kind of discussions from the Stone Age. Thank you, Andriy. It would be interesting to learn what you are doing now, what your activities are about, because it will be for us also an important kind of milestone, and it will tell us where to move forward and where to invest. But I would like to talk about the gas production. So what are the challenges, what are the prerequisites for the development of this area? What would we need to do to make sure that the promised era of big investment starts, and what are the challenges here? So we have representatives of two big players. Please choose who would like to speak the first about this issue. Please, over to you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me well? Alexei Zayats, Smart Energy Group. Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. If we speak frankly, we don't need much in our area. We need three things. First, that's security, and one more time security. It's not a secret that 2025 is the hardest year for our industry, especially at the end of February and beginning of March. Our industry was horrifyingly attacked, and our extraction companies and infrastructure, and in September these attacks resumed. The losses are huge. And it's true that these attacks happened starting from 2022. For example, one of our objects was destroyed in October 2023 in Kharkiv region, but it was never happening on that scale. So this winter is probably going to be the hardest if we talk about gas extraction. And the companies do everything possible and impossible to resume extraction. But we need money, we need time, and we need the people, and people again. Of course, to survive this winter, we need gas import, and our country imports a lot, but we need more and more to go through this winter. And also, it's very important for us to resume and to increase extraction in Kharkiv and Poltava regions. Because we have the limitation activity because of personal sanctions is NVO Energy PLC, and now extraction in this company is not going on. So that's about 70,000 daily of gas, and this country will lose 90 million over this next heating system. And if we talk about the fall of the previous year, our first draft was 3.2 billion hryvnias. Now we decreased the capex of 200, and these investments could have given their growth of the gas in our country. There are possible solutions, but we need political will to bring this solution. That's one point. That's about security, about extraction of gas in our country. Then the stability of the rules of work and taxation. For you to understand, we are the area that really needs a gigantic investment, and this is high-risk investment. And for that reason, we need to understand that today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, we will have the same taxation system, the same rules. And third, our sector needs to be sure that at any moment we can use market rules and market price to sell what we extract. And that's all we need. Security, stability of taxation and rules. And third, clear market rules, so we don't need to reinvent the bicycle, basically to do everything what we could do when we had free flow of gas with Europe. And probably the last thing that I would like to present today, now, probably our biggest task in our industry, in gas extraction and in energy sector overall, this is to preserve this sector, because if we defend, if we preserve this sector, then we have a chance to restore the industry potential of our country in the future. If not, then it will be a very different and probably very sad story. So we will do our best to preserve our sector and gas extraction. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Alexei. And I would like to ask the tech about the same thing, but I would like to add, remember, BCG? All microphones are working, everything is working, don't worry. But you remember when we were listening to the presentation of BCG expert said that according to their calculations, Ukraine will stay a net importer in the area of gas up until 2040, 2050. And I remember that when in my convocation of the parliament, we planned that Ukraine would become net exporter. Then we start to say that at least we'll get to zero of the need and consumption. What is your vision, and what should state do to give like additional motivation for this sector? My name is Yevhen Bondarenko, the Tech Oil and Gas. I'm responsible for development of business. I'm executive director. I absolutely agree with the colleague. Security is the most important thing, because at the beginning of March, our infrastructure was attacked really severely. So, of course, security is very important. But if we talk about the biggest challenge that we face, this is covering that demand, and this is about development. So Ukraine is the second after Norway in natural gas. So we need to bring in new technologies and invest in extraction. The Tech Oil and Gas is the biggest player on the market. Our share is 55%, and that's about 10% of in the country. And the main goal of the private and state. This is the main goal, because even during the war we need to invest. We need to look for investors. We need to invest in the infrastructure, because that's the only way for this balance of import and export to become positive for the country. And that's what we are doing. We are trying to preserve the extraction. We invested more than 12 billion hryvnias into extraction, and a big percentage of this investment is in exploratory extraction. And even though there is war, we need to do what we are supposed to do at any time, and that is very important. Also, we see a huge potential in a development partnership. The private players in partnership with state also developing common projects, and it's very important now to bring in international players, even now, because as our many players are interested in the light of the rare minerals agreement, and so there is interest of international players to receive their share, to receive their dividends, and we need to think not to create a line of investors, but at least to give them tools that can bring them to us, and for them to see our country and our sector as a good potential sector for investment. And can I ask Sakar company to comment your vision, especially take into account that we all saw the import of Azerbaijani gas, and unfortunately we saw quite aggressive actions from the Russia side, making this import impossible. And what's your vision? What do you see in Ukraine? What opportunities, and what are you going to invest in, your time, your money, and your technical solutions? Could you share with us? Good afternoon. My name is Andriy. We, as a company and as representatives of Azerbaijan, a country, we've been here since 2007 or 2008, and all these years we've been trying, and I think quite successfully, to provide innovative solutions in the area of petrol stations, and also providing gas, diesel, and other oil products. We've been providing almost 1 billion cubic meters of gas. That was of 2017-2021, before the invasion. And we are not maybe the first, but maybe second company that started to provide gas from America through Polish ports before the full-scale aggression of Russia. And we, as no one else, know what it means to be independent from Russia. Their actions in the 90s in Azerbaijan, when there was a contract of the year signed. This was probably the brightest example of what can cover all the words that have been said about independence, about import, security. All of it can be covered through similar actions. I'm not saying that this contract will save Ukraine and energy independence, but this contract helped Azerbaijan, and maybe Ukraine can do something similar. And this mineral agreement with Trump agreement, maybe it should be something similar. But it's not really about independence, because basically it's more replacing one dependence for another. And that's what Ukraine should avoid. And we need to find some different solutions. So small imports, and the small import, the small window of opportunities, because Azerbaijan doesn't have all the capacity to make the country fully independent and to move forward only with Azerbaijan. Ukraine needs various solutions. And if you look at different European countries that say it's impossible to live without Russian gas, Ukraine managed to do this. We did it together, and unfortunately there was an attack, but this is temporary damage. And look, to sum up, the only way forward, this is forward with the word independence. And not to say we don't want this or that. When we are independent from anyone, then we can develop our own domestic extraction, and our countries will bring investments. And Azerbaijan has experience of helping with people, and PP, Shell, Exxon, all these companies will be happy to come and do something, to extract, to earn something, invest, or to turn Ukraine into an exporter, if that is the country's strategy. We are always and maybe we are not the only, but one of not many international companies that stayed here. We are helping, we are investing, we are doing everything possible for Ukraine to be on the way to independence, energy independence, I mean. So this is our small vision. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrei. And I would like to give the floor to Oleg Homenko, Ukrainian Agribusiness Club. We met with you when there was a discussion around renewable energy. You shared your experience a lot, but the audience was different, so it's okay if you repeat the same ideas. But I would like to hear about your experience and experience of the members of your association on the market, and your vision, where we are going, what opportunities and what's necessary for development.
Thank you for your question. So we are a minority player at this market, so agricultural business is not like the heavy industry here. However, if we look at grain drying, so about 10 cubic meters of gas are needed to dry like 1 ton of grain, and for corn 300 cubic meters would be needed. Also, we work with the sugar production, and gas takes like 50% in the production here. And also, we have fertilizers. Without them, it's not possible to work, and 80% in the cost of fertilizers is gas. So if we sum it all up, we will see that we have about 1 billion cubic meters consumption of gas in agriculture. Maybe I am wrong, maybe I am right, but I tried to calculate the numbers this morning. And of course, we depend on the cost of products. We depend on the global market, and raising the cost of harvest or the cost of grains, so that here we would need to look at the global markets, global prices. Unfortunately, we are not a market maker who can influence the global prices. Of course, like as it happened when the war started, when we were not able to export at all, of course, it made an impact on the global prices as well. But if we have growing costs due to grain processing and using fertilizers, of course, it would make an impact on our business, not on the global market that much. And in that context, the strategy of companies should be considered. And we remember when the price of gas was growing, and then the companies were making calculations and decided that they would need to switch to alternatives. And there were some approaches which were used to optimize the cost of the drying process. In 2022-2023, we worked quite actively. Then in 2023, the price went down in a way, and we need to talk not only about energy independence for each unit. Of course, it is hard to say no to the gas, but we all need to optimize to make investments in renovation of our production capacities to reduce the use of gas per one ton of grain. And we see investments in biogas produced from biomass. And biomass, this is something that we can actively use in order to hedge the risks and to avoid rapid price changes. And considering a gas deficit, we can have problems with our harvest because we have this drying technologies which need gas. So in this context, I want to say that we can, for example, buy fertilizers from other markets, but still we need to have certain processing. We need to dry the grains that is important. So we depend on the price of gas quite a lot, and in the cost of grain, it is 15 to 17%, I would say. So for us, it is a critical question. Thank you. I would say that all industries in Ukraine depend on the energy sector or on the prices of gas. So now I would like to ask a question. So could you share your vision about the gas market in Ukraine and its future? So what should be the tools? So we heard about the mineral deal, and is it the way that we need to choose? And I heard about the lithium situation, which and I think that the position is not fair for Ukraine about the lithium deposit. So maybe you would like to comment on that. And please share the experience of your work in Naftogaz. It is very important for all the players. And I would like to ask about the future of Укргазвидобування. So will it be continuation of the current operation, or will it be a separate company without this kind of extra upper layer that we still have today? So, Andriy, over to you. Well, you asked a lot of questions. I will not be able to answer all of them, so I will choose some. And I think that there are some questions which are important for our today's discussion. It's not that I really loved everything that our team was doing, but I think that the gas market has been operating for quite a long time, and it is quite effective because it was based on diversification of supply. When we depended on only Gazprom, we could not talk about diversification. Now we can talk about it, and consumers, they have a choice. So our colleagues from the agrarian sector said that it is problematic when gas prices are growing. I agree with that, and I understand that gas takes a certain percentage in the cost of products. For example, if we talk at the chemical production, so it is a good example here. But there is a worse problem than expensive gas. But what is worse than that is when there is no gas at all, when money does not decide the problem. There were such situations in different countries of the world at certain points of history, and it's very unpleasant. So there are market mechanisms to regulate the prices for gas, and I think that this is the basis. During the wartime, there was a ban on export. I cannot say that I agree or disagree with the solution. There were some alternative solutions. This is an easy way. It can be quite effective, but I hope that the ban will be soon lifted because it hinders the development of the market and it makes it more difficult for the gas production companies to work. If we talk about consumption, we talked about the thermal enterprises, and now we see that generation is growing. So for me personally, it is interesting what will be the additional gas generation coming from the stations which were built in the previous years, and I'm sure that it will influence the demand and the price building. But I would like to talk about gas production, which is just one of the components. So there is just actually, production is just a segment of the market. It works as part of the whole market. And maybe you heard it from me or Victoria why Ukraine did not become a net exporter. And I have an unpleasant answer to that. The problem is that we have not learned to work in long-term perspective. So we are like a chess player, but we only see the next step. If we need to think 4 or 5 steps ahead, it leads either to just a luck, or when we are lucky, or to a failure, we are not lucky. Ukraine has been producing gas for more than 100 years, and we can kind of have an argument with colleagues from Azerbaijan who started to produce gas first, but we all started to do it in our region. Like we were one of the pioneers. Like Americans, they started before us, but in our region, we were one of the first. It means that a lot of potential simple solutions that were available in our territory, and the resource, the resource is limited. And the simple solutions, they have been used. We have collected all the low-hanging fruits. And those who look for other options, like we did a wonderful analysis with experts, and we were told that you do not have this kind of upper hanging fruit. So finding similar deposits at the same depth is just not possible. You have deeper deposits or smaller deposits, and gradually you are now switching from conventional to unconventional deposits. And I am talking about tight gas. This is something between the slates and the conventional gas. And what is the problem of the shale and this tight gas? And what did we understand when we worked on the 2020 program? To increase the production, and we need to go into tight gas, and we need to go offshore, because conventional deposits in the normal process of work, so there are certain indicators there, and at some point it does not make sense, because for a short term you can have a bigger output with additional drilling. But for the future it will not be effective, because these bore holes, they are not needed, and it is more important to use the resources to find new interesting possible deposits and making them commercially viable. But if we go to the chess analogy, so we have our shareholders, they ask about production and what the traditional approach is to intensify the production. And I'm talking more about state-run enterprises, private companies. Sometimes they try to use more rational solutions. But what I mean is that we are going in a fool's direction. What I want to say is that there was a good event signing this mineral deal with DFC, and it can kind of push us to work on the tight gas. We need a kind of complex technology. For example, Chinese still work with the American Halliburton company to work out new methods and or improve existing methods. So even China, with all the technical opportunities, they still use American experience in that to do it right. Because to get this gas, you need a huge infrastructure facilities to have the scale effect, because producing this gas in one or two places, it doesn't make sense. You need a big kind of orchestra, big complex of units. Then you would be able to be competitive with as compared with other countries, because there is, for example, some Eastern countries who can offer the LNG, so you cannot just use the shale gas. It doesn't work like that.
So this deal with DFC, this is a chance to bring American technologies. So for those collectors who are already known, and I'm going to quote my former colleagues from OGV, they had a really high-quality analysis, which was already done after the beginning of full-scale invasion. They are comparing collectors of the eastern part of Ukraine in Donetsk, Dnipro. They have their intensity and their basically if you compare these key parameters, they are very similar to America, but the depth is different, about 1 kilometer difference. It's not too different. It's possible to work. It will be a bit more difficult, a little bit more expensive. We need to drill wells, which are a lot more complicated than which are now like there. So the drill that is like the wells that is one state company is doing now, it costs about $10 million. The wells that I'm talking about will cost from 30 to 50. What it means for the state company? For the state company, it means the first obstacle. They need to come to dozens of controllers and explain to them, so why on earth the drill, which is not economically proven, it's just an experiment, will cost that much. And as a former employee of a state company, I never saw managers who would sign something like that. Even if they say that they will support that when they are appointed at this position, and then when people in uniforms explain how they can be punished for decisions like this, it's like, yeah, let's just intensify the existing drilling. So I don't believe that state companies in the modern paradigm are able to change their ways. And in my opinion, this non-traditional gas, this is a challenge for private companies. And I believe that the ideal format is the mix of domestic companies, American technologies, and money. Exxon and Shell will not come here. Even after the war is over, they will not come here. And they left us not because of the war. They left because of bureaucracy. Because to create one well, you need to spend 3 years for not understandable bureaucracy who are hinting on something. And of course, they understand what they are supposed to do to get all the necessary documents, but they are not allowed to use those ways. And that's why they left our market. And to sum up, I believe that for the gas market in Ukraine, we need the right work in production sector and non-traditional collectors. We look at offshore, we had seismic analysis, we never went to the sea because a Norwegian ship was afraid to go that far. I think that so I don't think that that's what we can do in the near future because of the war. So we need to change these traditional collectors, and we need TFC money and technologies, and we need private business and private appetite for risk. State companies, in my opinion, can either be partners with someone who can do it, I mean partners with private companies, but it looks too complicated, or they need to stay in the segment and they can work on conventional deposits, and private companies should work on the new methods. Thank you very much for this very deep analysis. I would like to ask the rest of panelists to comment. And maybe the tech, oil and gas, and smart energy, maybe you would like to comment. What do you think? Are you ready to go into projects like this? That's what I was saying during my speech, that I guess that is a good opportunity for the country, and this is a good opportunity for private companies as well. And of course, we need to bring in the American companies that can create partnership with state companies, private companies, and we can develop this direction. This is an opportunity for the country. That's what we need to invest in. And what about your company? Do you see some opportunities if we talk about mineral deal? It's too foggy at this point, but we hope that something will work out of it. I would like to comment. Recently, we had a wonderful conference. It was in Interconti in the basement. Not yes conference, no, because I remember Timothy Snyder's speech from that conference. It was a different conference. There was an interesting conversation with representatives of Ministry of Economy who are responsible for creating the fund. There was a good discussion, $1 billion there, 50 million there, titanium here, lithium here. And then I asked him a question. And then Mr. Kobolev commented, what is the level of risk that is acceptable for you? Because the problem is that we have great, virtually we can make trillions, but when we ask 2p, and it's well, we have nothing at this point. And for many investment funds, that is a huge obstacle, because if this object is not geologically studied, then it's an obstacle. But there is a good news for gas sector. So what is already explored in Ukraine, that's actually gas. And to see if the managers of this respectable American institution, if they want to move fast and they want to show in America the result, that's what they need to start with, oil and gas, because we have objects which are quite well explored. They are even geologically described, even this tight gas. We have lots of wells and drills, we have the depths, we have the currents, we have all the necessary that for developing these big collector wells. So that's where we can move fast. And if there is a lot of fog around lithium, what I mean that we say that yes, you need some time to develop, but oil and gas, this is something that can be done fast. We can do it tomorrow. And I hope that our state leaders, they understand this, and I hope that soon we will see investment in this direction. And yes, there will be resistance. There will be resistance from a big number of people who continue with ideology, give us license. Next, we will just duplicate the existing deposits. And it's sad, but we don't have many options in this direction. So this type of people, they have less and less money, and it's harder for them to work. But those people who are looking at tide and they say that we are ready to work with something new, they have great opportunities. So I have really high hopes. And if this train starts moving, it will be impossible to stop this train. The same as gas market. And everybody was saying that all this diversification was going to die. No, it's not going to die. When people feel this smell and taste of freedom, it will not get. And now we need to feel this taste of tight gas. Ukrainian tight gas. And a few comments. Andrei mentioned Program 2020, and I would like to comment a bit. So because many private companies, they get a big effect, because for us it's very hard to bring in foreign companies, drilling companies. And if we understand our business, no private company has the volume of work and working programs, and that it can be interesting for a good European or American company. No private company can offer this volume of work. And if the state company started to bring these companies to Ukrainian market, so we, as private companies, had a chance to work with these companies, and it was a great push to develop our sector. And also liberalization when we had liberalization and we had new tariffs for all gas consumers. So in the future, we hope that we will have mechanisms that we will be able to offer service companies and foreign companies to offer them interesting area of work in Ukraine. Yes, this is discussion. You can just join in. Yes, I would like to join the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Andrei. I have a few messages. First, what I agree where I agree with you, this is, yes, about clearing, this is fighting consequences. But this situation was not created by local authorities. We didn't create PSO and we didn't create these conditions. And maybe Naftogaz or you personally don't think that we are element of market. But if you take away these communal enterprises and replace it with something, we saw Kryvyi Rih. By the way, we invite all of you to come to Kryvyi Rih, how local authorities are working and how state-owned works. The half of the city has heating and communal enterprise provides this, and half of the city has no heating, and which is a centralized supplier. So where did it come from? It came from because tariffs are not economically justified. Do we want to be responsible for heating? Most mayors, they will be happy not to be responsible for that. But if, according to the law, local authorities are responsible for that, and tariffs are frozen, and we do have benefits for local population, so then local authorities and consumers inside the community, they are hostages of the situation. Third point, thank you for mentioning Zhytomyr, the mayor of Zhytomyr. And actually in our association, he was responsible for energy efficiency. But what he's saying now, he also in his city, the difference with tariffs is created. So now the heating is blocked for him right now, I mean, because we recently talked with him, and it's not a market, yeah, and yes, he installed all this different equipment, and no, but we ask a question, if there is deficit of gas, we have communities that decreased the consumption, but then don't impose the procurement of this gas. Let's just move to the approach to procure it heating. Look at Khmelnytsky, Ternopil, Bucha, Cherkasy, so they decreased consumption and they introduced new technologies. So I talked to the mayor of Bucha, and he said that there is no difference in tariffs. I work on the market, but then who created this difference in tariffs? But then we become the hostages of the difference of tariffs. And then during every budget cycle, we come up with some ad hoc solution about clearing or different percentage, and we need to have clear rules. But now local authorities are hostage of the situation. That's what I disagree with. We will also have a party if we were not responsible for purchasing heating, and if we didn't need to do all of these multiple webinars where like how to create all the templates of all the documents. And now basically our legal department worked on a different thing, but now our legal department was all working with communal enterprises, helping them to work in courts and deal with gas.
So there are no legislative requirements in this sphere. So thank you for giving me the floor. Just a short comment. First of all, Kryvyi Rih is my favorite city in terms of heating. Can you talk about the losses? So what is the percentage lost when the gas is supplied? I remember that it used to be more than 40% of the losses while transportation in pipes. Well, why I mentioned Ternopil? No, I'm talking about Kryvyi Rih. 13, 14, but there are two main consumers. The state-run consumer and the, is it 40, 47? 47%. So while the losses are 47%, no gas will save you. But as long as I remember myself, it was around 47% loss in Kryvyi Rih. And every new mayor said that they can do nothing about it. So you lose half of the gas. So it is just heating the air around. So it's not working like that. The problem with the segment is that there are, for example, cities like Zhytomyr, with a mayor who did the homework. But there are cities like Kryvyi Rih who say, well, nothing can be done. Just give me more gas. And I'm not joking. So they say that sign the contract with us, provide us with more gas, or we will all die in winter. And then the state says that, we need to help everyone, we need to have equal terms for everyone. So for me, personally, it is a big puzzle why mayors who have such big losses, they are still popular and re-elected. But, if you are losing this gas, which is so expensive, you cannot be a market player. In Ternopil, it is 0.75. In Zaporizhia, it is 11 with all the attacks. Well, I think, Andriy, we all agree that there is this problem, but I would like to give an opportunity for everyone to share their thoughts. So what is the solution here? Let us be honest. So what is the solution here? I'm just concerned with what Andriy said, that it is great to talk about tariffs and price differences and the open market when we have gas. So it just bothers me. What is the situation with the balance of gas? Maybe we come up with some nice strategies, but do we have gas actually? Well, maybe we have it, but will we have it in the future? Who can say that? Who can give the answer? Well, if you're talking to me, we would need to have the head of Naftogaz here. I cannot speak on his behalf because we should not be guided by what we feel. For example, the same percentage can feel fair or unfair to us. For example, what I said about lithium production. So sometimes I can have a feeling that I don't like something, but then when we see calculations, it is quite different. So we need to look at the balance. I know that there is a lot of work around import of gas. How successful those efforts are, it's hard to say. I think that Naftogaz is using this forward contracts because the curve of gas looks in such a way that it makes sense for us to use these forward contracts. It would give us economic advantages. So we do not see these contracts that they have signed. If they have enough volume according to those contracts, and considering the nuances of the war situation, I would still say that import is more effective than the underground storage. And if they have a portfolio that is enough for the winter, considering the gas generation capacities, so we will need to see numbers to talk about the future capacities. I would not be guided by our feelings now. Thank you so much. We would suggest to have a shorter break so that we come back at 11:30, maybe 11:35 maximum. I hope you will have enough time for coffee, and I would like to say thank you to everyone who participated in this discussion, and see you later in 15 minutes. come and join me here.
Шановні учасники нашої дискусійної панелі, яка називається «Ринок електроенергії».
So, dear participants of our panel discussion, electricity market, what's needed to improve the investment climate. So, we would continue the same topic that we started during the previous panel discussion about the gas market. So, let us talk first of all about the investment climate. Where do you see the place of Ukraine now? I would like to repeat the phrase that we all know, like, what reforms are you still missing? That the classical quote that we use here. So what are the drivers and enablers, and what are the hindering factors? I would like to start with Volodymyr Kudrytsky. Could you give us the big picture, where we are we going to? I know that we attended some joint conferences before, so could you also talk about your vision of the energy mix? I think that that is the main departure point to have the same vision on where Ukraine should be moving to in the short term and in the long term as well. And I would ask other speakers to also touch upon this topic. I think that all our participants will be interested in hearing about how you see the energy mix. Thank you, Victoria. And good afternoon, everyone. So the electricity market today has some objective and subjective factors that make an impact on. So yeah, what reforms are we still missing? We will talk about it a bit later, but I would like to start with a big picture. Ukraine, if we look at the map of Europe, Ukraine is in the price area which has one of the highest prices if we talk about the weighted price. And not only Ukraine has this situation, also Slovakia, Hungary, Poland, Romania, they have the same situation. And in Europe also, there are Baltic states, Balkan states, which have a similar situation, and Bulgaria. Why? Because in those countries, the price is formed by thermal generation, which is the highest price in the energy mix today. In Ukraine, we have nuclear and thermal generation that are dominating, and they are much more expensive than the energy mix in Scandinavian countries, where they have a lot of wind energy and other alternative sources. And in Spain, for example, maybe it's not such a good example now, but they have solar energy, gas, and wind energy. So we do not sell kilowatt hours. We do not sell a product. I would like to say that we rather sell a service. We can see it quite well if we look at the global energy system. When it is not so important to produce a kilowatt of energy, it is important to produce it when the consumer needs and in the volume that the consumer needs. So kilowatt per hour produced by different stations, they have kind of different value for the consumer, depending on For example, if it depends on the weather or if it's flexible enough, so battery would be most flexible, and also the gas engine power plants and hydro power plants. Traditionally, high price of energy in Ukraine can change when we change our energy mix. How it should change, actually, that was decided about 2017, 2018, that the post-Soviet energy sources should be changed with less expensive sources, not because of the green transition logos, but just because solar energy and the wind energy, they are just cheaper, and they need to be mixed with the batteries and with the gas engine power plants. So batteries used to be expensive, now they are 10 times cheaper. So they can be the element of the system which would allow to reduce the price with the solar and wind energy. So that is how I see this kind of route to reducing the price of the energy. No slogans, no strategies around investments can change that. So we need to just change the energy mix over time. That is what we need to do. And I think that we need 4 to 5 years to make it happen, because despite all the statements about some generation, modular generation, like Bulgaria, first, etc., and all those conferences which are happening, so that we only have 22 megawatts of working storages. And thanks to the colleagues, we have now 220. But the demand is like 10 times higher or more. And if we talk about the gas generation that Kobolev was discussing, we have good news and bad news. Good news is that it will not consume that much gas, because we'll have maybe like 300 to 400 megawatts. We are not talking about gigawatts of gas cubes that will be consumed by this new generation facilities. So we are moving to changing the energy mix, but gradually and fundamentally. For quite a long time, we will still be in this price zone of Europe with quite high prices. And about the reforms that we are missing, we can talk a lot about price caps, liberalization, and all those things, but I need one reform around the regulator. And to be honest, for the energy sector, it's not that important who is the minister and which ministry is responsible, but what is important is who is the regulator. Why? Because I am convinced that today we do not have a regulator. There is no role of the regulator as a referee at the market, because if we look at the operation and the response of the regulator that we have, I can say that the regulator is dependent on the political influence and environment. And you can try to imagine, for example, a football game without a referee. So will there be fair play?
Markets which are regulated, so their volume is about trillions of hryvnias. This is the heat, energy, communal services. So this is like the second most important regulator after the National Bank. And so, of course, if institutionally regulator is weak, and when the market on its own, if we talk about energy production, is very consolidated, I mean that the power is consolidated in the hands of the few players. First three probably have more than 70% share of the market. And of course, there is a possibility of abuse and not really regulating properly of this market. So what we need here, we need something like Security Exchange Commission, like in the United States. We all saw all these Hollywood movies about stock exchange, and these bad players are usually arrested. So we need a real good regulator on this market there is equal field for everyone, no manipulation, no abuse, no inside trading. So if to sum up, energy can be much cheaper, but if we have changed some very big things, but it can be even a bit cheaper if we still resolve like some smaller institutional gaps on Ukrainian market. And of course, if we talk about some unified market, when Ukrainian consumer, supplier, or some plant can buy energy maybe like for the day ahead on the same market as Poland or Slovakia, so we need to understand that all price caps and PSO, we will need to get rid of them to create equal place. And I want to explain maybe like the story of cheap nuclear. So actually, nuclear generation is not cheap. It's average 170 kopics per kilowatt. But as atom and nuclear hydro energy, so they have this burden, so they cannot put 1.7, 1.2 and sell this energy because they need to raise money to pay for the population because they pay tariff which are lower than market price. It looks like the generation will cost as if this energy comes from gas rather than nuclear. And this PSO, which we have for Ukratom and Nuclear Hydroenergo, so it influences the seller at the market, and they have to put this PSO add to the price. So when we resolve subjective issues, based on my intuition, we can resolve like 10-15% of the price now, and then if we change the energy mix, we can go up to 100%. Thank you very much. And I have to admit, I remember the process of preparing the draft law on the independent energy regulator. I remember the fights around the key point of political independence. Unfortunately, when we were looking for compromises, we harm. And we believe that this should be a priority alongside with PSO. And we need to resolve it now, during the war, not to wait until the war is over. There are no barriers right now for these issues to be resolved. And so here it is all about political will, and I would say certain push from our partners, in the first place our European partners, who should be interested in independent regulator in Ukraine. And for us, we need to leave the Soviet heritage behind, and for some reason it is believed that tariffs for the population and the price for population should be much lower than other consumers. Yeah, the State Committee on Prices. Yeah. Now I would like to give the floor to Alexander Kalenkov. As you are one of the big players of consumers of electricity, we heard that the prices are low or relatively low. Sorry, high. I meant high. See, I misunderstood, Mr. Volodymyr. How does it influence your business? And what do you think should be changed on this market? As a consumer, how do you think this should be resolved? And do you really feel that the state doesn't play this referee who can balance the interests of all players on the market? Thank you for giving me the floor. Yes, when we talk about being attractive for investments, of course, it is all about consumption, how much we can consume. So before the invasion, my sector consumed up to 58% of all consumption of energy in the industry. I think that the consumption of Ukrzaliznytsia was included there because we are the main client of Ukrzaliznytsia. And of course, these proportions are changing, it will change in the future. But the minerals exploration, they require a lot of energy. And the mix of this energy is important because we are going to be part of Europe, and now we sell up to more than 60% of our goods to Europe, it is very important to us. And for all state monopolies basically, our energy market is quite a monopoly. If you talk about regulated tariff, for us, an economical justification is important, predictability is important, competitiveness is important, but it's all interconnected. The prices for energy in different countries of European Union are very different. And when we look at August, for example, prices were higher in Ukraine than in the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, from where we could import. It was for us 111 euros, and those countries 93. But even on those days, when enterprises, ArcelorMittal, they wanted to import some share, they couldn't do that because there was no capacity that Ukrenergo could provide. Then the regulator looked into these cases, fined. But of course, these fines, these hundreds of thousands of fines, but they do not compensate the loss of the companies. And it's not just a loss on that day when the company can import. The availability of this import can influence prices in long term. So for us, it is economical justification, the level, and a fair play for the whole market. That's what's important for us. If we look at the role of the regulator, it is important. But the cost of electricity, it's actually sad that the General Manager ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih is not here because he talks about the prices and the cost of Ukrainian energy. He has been talking for longer than a year. Now it's been 20 years since ArcelorMittal entered Ukrainian market. It was the biggest FDI in Ukraine, and unfortunately, after 20 years, it's still the biggest. foreign direct investment, and Arcelor during the invasion, they invested even more. They invested $1 billion more. They invested more than $1 billion since the invasion, but the capacity of the company to survive and keep working is now under a big question, because the share of electricity in the cost of goods. So, of course, when we talk about, if we talk about metal industry, the cost of goods, that's about the cost of energy, that's up or over 40%. But, for example, for this enterprise in Kryvyi Rih, that's about 20%. And it makes the goods not competitive. And ArcelorMittal has enterprises in many countries of the world and Europe, and they can compare. There are schemes that allow us to compensate. They allow to keep the prices for consumers at the low level, because it's important to understand that consumers build demand and prices. If God forbid, ArcelorMittal leaves the market, or they substantially decrease their production, even though it is lower than it could have been, that it would be a loss of consumption on the energy sector, and whether we can compensate this with export, I don't know. But if it creates domino effect and energy will fall, and why it is a domino effect? Because if it's one enterprise, they transport 8 million tons of raw material and goods. There is a basically, Ukrzaliznytsia has a decrease in their transportation if this enterprise disappears. Also, the question of what's going to happen to local budget and small enterprises which are working around this big enterprise. So it will be a negative impact not only on the energy sector, but on the country overall. And for that reason, in European Union, enterprises like this are supported in all possible ways. And so, for example, the price can be compensated by green energy. We also have some compensations. But those enterprises that they pay for this component, they receive compensation. So they receive free allowances when they receive more quotas for CO2 than they need, and they can sell these quotas. Right now, we are preparing, I mean, not us personally, but ArcelorMittal, they are preparing detailed document, and we engage in this process. And we are preparing the document how Europe supports high energy consumption enterprises. And because we are going to Europe, and we need to understand what mechanisms are used to support these enterprises. And to go back to what we've discussed before, for example, the price for ArcelorMittal, $140 for the enterprise. Regulated tariff, that's about $25, about transportation, dispatching, distribution, and we can influence there as well.
And half of the tariff is like $16 is compensation for the green energy, and that is the practice that exists in Europe. But in Europe, this money goes back to the enterprise in this or that way. In Ukraine, it does not happen. There was this idea to compensate from the budget, and it was in the law used to be, but now it's not there about this 20%. Also, there was a question about the efficiency of the energy market regulator. So those are also people working in the energy sector, and I hope that they think about the interests of the country and that they can provide independent audit and assessment. So about the tariff. So tariff should be the kind of cost and it should include all the expenditures. But often the discussions held at the level of the regulator, usually they are just formal when everybody gets like a couple of minutes to speak, and then everybody agrees with everyone, and that's it. Sometimes some MPs visit their discussions and they become more intense, but we think that there should be a really an independent body, an independent regulator who would make it easier to forecast the regulated tariff. If we talk about unregulated tariff, here I have concerns about the role of Energoatom. I understand that if their bonus depends on the income that they get, they will make everything to make sure not to sign long-term contracts as in Europe, but to sign contracts for like 10 days or something like that, or for the import not to happen. So if we talk about unregulated tariff, here we need to take into account position of Energoatom and the possibility to import and sign long-term contracts that would allow companies to switch to long-term agreements and will make an impact on the market prices. So now the situation that we have, like one of the highest prices in Europe at the level of the Western Europe. Like last week we had a meeting when we discussed that now in Poland prices are a bit higher than in Ukraine. And the director of ArcelorMittal said that it's not a good example because now Arcelor is stopping its production in Poland. Let us look at Slovakia and other neighbors of Ukraine. Yesterday we had a discussion with DSC. They organized this investment fund, and electricity is takes a big part in minerals production. For us, it is very important to have a fair price, because I am now quoting the director of ArcelorMittal. They could continue to finance the enterprise in Ukraine, because really there are some objective factors such as huge attacks and destruction of the generation facilities and a lot of issues which are objective. But at the same time, there are many factors that can be resolved by the state, making the mechanisms more transparent and clear. I'm talking about import, long-term contracts, in particular of Energoatom. There are some peculiarities there, but the state side here we have like negotiations with like Polish counterparts and other players. But I think that Ukraine as a state has more possibilities than just Ukrenergo, so Ukrenergo should be supported. And about long-term contracts for generation, well, probably public officials, they are not always able to directly impact if like those contracts are short-term or long-term, but there could be some methods used to encourage long-term contracts. And we can look at the example of France. In France, 25% of the generated energy they sell at the fixed prices, 42 a year, for example, and that's a good practice to reduce the price. Then they will later change this mechanism. They will take a tax from excessive profit as compared with the nuclear generation, and maybe such a mechanism could also be used in Ukraine. And yes, Energoatom has a huge social functions as well as the Ukrzaliznytsia, the Ukrainian railway, but it is still hard for the industry. And when our Western partners are funding half of our budget, it is a good time to say that we had this unhealthy practice when, for example, in order to keep low prices for population, and maybe we should do it during the wartime, but we lack money. Maybe there could be targeted funding to cover this. The same goes for the railway. We want to have like low prices for the railway tickets, so we can have a targeted support for this. So when our state, our government is thinking how to support industry, when, for example, the industry companies, they use electricity, they use railway, and we can make sure that the government helps with that. In Europe, I think that tariffs for people are higher than for the industry because industrial companies, they create some value for the economy. That is why they are offered lower tariffs. So I am sure that the government can find some way not to create an additional burden for the energy sector, and at the same time create some possibilities for the industrial companies. As they say, if there is a will, there is a way. So it is always possible to find some solutions. I really hope that the Prime Minister, who used to be the Minister of Economy, listens to you, hears you, and she is ready to come up with this joint vision and the will to find the right solutions. So we have heard the consumers, and now I would like to give the floor to Dmytro, Chief Operating Officer, DTEC Energy. So first of all, I would like to thank your company for providing light in our homes, in our offices. Thank you for the projects that you have implemented. For example, there was an announcement just recently about the batteries and the storage facilities that you have built. That is a wonderful project, and I think that we can now continue the previous discussion when we talked about the prospects of development of the green energy. That is a very important component to make sure that like all the sectors grow and develop. What are your plans for the future? What are you going to do with the TPPs? Where do you plan to invest and how, and what should the government do to make sure that there are investments? Maybe we should not only talk about the government, but also our European and American partners as well. Thank you, Victoria. I would like to also thank all the colleagues who work in the energy sector. It's not just us, also all those who work in the energy sector. They all suffer a lot of damage due to the attacks. We all try to work as one team and support each other. I would like to speak on behalf of a company producing energy and electricity, but the question of energy mix is very important, as the previous speaker mentioned. And I think that we need to look at the current situation, we need to look at the middle term and long-term situation. Because if we try to change the energy mix very quickly, it can lead to growing costs, in particular for the consumer, and it will be a shock. At the moment, on the one hand, we have diversified generation in the country, but we have a basic generation, Energoatom, we have solar and wind energy that is not basic, but it is seasonal generation, such as Ukregidroenergo. They can do some maneuvers to cover the peak moments, and we have also fossil fuel generation to cover the peak consumption in winter, in the morning and in the evening. And we need to understand that this area needs a lot of investment for production and extraction, and also we need to have more blocks as a backup also, which requires investments. So what is the current situations, what the challenges are? I think the challenges are the same, more or less, for everyone. We have some slides here I want to show. Just a moment. So, I would like to underline again, with no details, you understand why, but there were more than 200 attacks on generation facilities, and 50 times we had to just start basically from scratch. Before the war, we never had the situations like that. 90% of TPPs were lost due to attacks as of summer 2024. However, we continue to invest in current repairs and maintenance and capital repair. So about the challenges, so we have outdated equipment and capacities, we have ruined and damaged equipment, so we need to continue cooperation with our European and American partners who have been helping us throughout these years to provide critical equipment.
Yes, we do have the national plan on reducing waste, but we need to update it and take into account that we have a deficit in generation of fuel, and we in the situation that we have now, because if we close the power blocks too fast, it will increase deficit. Another topic which is relevant for everyone, to basically support the construction of new capacities, we need to have capacity mechanisms which were implemented for battery storage, and our company as you said correctly, this package. But in order to support the capacity that we have, for that time when it is necessary for the state, we need to have a real strategy for our energy mix. We need mechanisms, and before the war, we looked into this as the market of capacity that, for example, when we can use the power blocks only like on those months when it is necessary. We have structural issues, the problem with debts on energy market. There is no simple solution, but it is necessary for the state to define the exhaustive list of socially important enterprises that we cannot disconnect from the power grid, and develop a mechanism of compensating these expenses, because at this moment, this type of market is not functioning, and that's connected that many consumers, since before the war, they haven't been paying for energy, and it's not only about heat generation, that's about the state generation and others. It's important for investments into the market to continue. It is important to unite this market with European energy system, market coupling, and the free access of all participants to the market. It will create transparent rules of the game, and it will create possibility to invest into new projects. So we do have challenges, that we have some limits in loans in coal industry, but as a short term, it is necessary to support those capacities which are necessary for the system. And what we see for mid-term and long-term transformation for energy system, and in particular for our company. So first of all, we need to recover the current capacity. We need to support them now. We have a strategy up to 2035, and we see that they are necessary for the energy system. Then we need to increase renewable generation, battery storage, because they allow us to smooth these peaks that we see in the morning and in the evening. They also will give the possibility for black start for big consumers. We also now developing some initial developments of replacing obsolete coal generation into more modern gas generation, and we are calculating how feasible that is. And if you talk about long term, it might take many years to implement, but these are small modular reactors and other. So to resolve all the problems that my colleagues have presented and structural issues, I believe it will push the foreign investments and in domestic investors in Ukraine as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Dmytro, for the detailed analysis. And if we talk about phasing out of thermal generation, that is a long-term strategy, and you are planning to replace them with SMR. Yes, we now, for now, we are looking more into gas generation, modern technologies instead of coal. And what are you going to do instead of coal generation? We are looking into different options. Basically, instead of coal generation, as there is all the infrastructure present, we are planning partly or fully use it for gas generation and battery, because we have access to water and distribution. SMR is more long-term. because you understand that this technology is very new and only one company, as far as we know, received license to build this type of reactors. And a very logical continuation of our discussion will be from Mr. Mark Job, who represents Pins and Mazars. Mark, over to you.
Share with us your presentation. Give me just a second so I can pivot to this point accordingly, okay? Дійсно, ми вже з вами почули, що
Yes, it's true. We've heard that big nuclear generation, it is our heritage, and it is an advantage of the country. But in the conditions that we are in, and if we consider that basically we have the fleet of nuclear blocks which should have been decommissioned, but instead we do repairs, capital repairs. I saw with my own eyes there are some really substantial changes in Rivne nuclear power plant, where everything have been replaced from some small elements that would influence security up to really considerate changes. So if we look at these nuclear blocks at nuclear power plant in Rivne, it's not the Soviet plant anymore. But the question is whether nuclear generation is our future, in what form we can have it in the future, is small modular reactors. That's a solution for us as consumers, and it will allow us to have lower prices, or at least competitive prices. And Mark is going to share his ideas about how the process of engagement looks like in the world, because he has big experience working on these big projects. He has a direct connection with Ukraine because he worked with CBRD when the sarcophagus for Chernobyl nuclear power plant was implemented. So Mark will have 6-minute presentation for all of us about his experience, about his company, and to present the vision where we can move.
Listen really to your presentation.
Thank you, Victoria. Can everybody hear me? Is that coming through okay?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Good. Let me just start the presentation then. Can you see that presentation? Is that up on the screen at the moment?
Not yet.
Okay, just bear with me. Can you now see that?
Yes, now we can see that.
Excellent, good. Well, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about the nuclear power generation opportunity in Ukraine. Just really to set the scene and tell you things I'm sure many of you know, Ukraine has had a long commitment to generating electricity through the use of nuclear energy, and has an established policy to grow that nuclear generating capacity. Before the war, in Europe at least, Ukraine was only second to France in terms of its generation of electricity from nuclear power, and had 15 reactors producing over 50% of its electricity. As many of you will know, 50% of that capacity is now in Russian control with their takeover of the Zaporizhzhia power plant. But the remainder still produced around 60% of Ukraine's reduced electricity supply. And whilst that fleet was constructed throughout the 80s, most of those reactor units have had life extensions, but there is potential for them to be further extended. Ukraine, as I say, is committed and has an established policy of growing its nuclear capacity. And that was very much in evidence shortly before the war, entering into agreements with Westinghouse to build 9 new reactors, and with Holtec just a few years earlier to develop an SMR capability to replace a couple of the oldest reactors in Ukraine. Definitely, Ukraine has more than evidenced a commitment to nuclear energy, electricity generation, and looking forward, the need to renew and indeed grow electricity energy supply in Ukraine suggests that nuclear has potentially a very big part to play. Alongside that, we are seeing a marked rise in the popularity of nuclear power generation across the globe, really heralding a significant change of attitude to nuclear power and a potential golden era. Ironically, speaking at this conference, that was partly down to the war, which has led to many seeing nuclear as a way of promoting energy security by reducing the reliance on large fossil fuel imports. But probably more so, it's really just an increasing realization in the modern world of the simple scale of the electricity demand that is anticipated, both in everyday usage, whether that's from AI or data centers or electric cars or air conditioning in the wake of climate change, and in the role of decarbonisation as consumers and industry shift towards electrification. In fact, the OECD report that demand for electricity has increased at twice the rate of the total energy demand over the past decade. So electricity need far outstripping other energy supply. And I think it's that realization of the demand alongside the reality of realizing that renewables as a clean means of generating that demand is just not going to cut the mustard. In particular, nuclear can provide high volumes of stable 24/7 clean electricity that can be easily turned on and off. Renewables, by contrast, remain vulnerable to the weather. They also take up considerably more space than nuclear plants. And with developing technology in the nuclear industry, particularly around the SMR market, the small modular reactor market, means that nuclear is increasingly seen as better able to provide that electricity at specific locations, such as those data centers or remote mines or the like. And in fact, what's a very interesting development and is seriously shifting the momentum in the sector is that the private sector is now becoming a major driver of interest in nuclear energy as a means of generating electricity, and particularly those emerging technologies around SMRs and the like, with the likes of Amazon, Google, and Microsoft all having recently signed power purchase agreements for nuclear generated
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but we still see your first page of the presentation. Did you plan to move forward?
Okay. No, that is correct.
Okay, just to make sure.
No, that's fine. Just to sum up, as is shown on the first slide there, what we are seeing in that climate is major policy changes from the likes of the World Bank and other financial institutions who are making commitments, changes of policy, which are providing potential access to new finance for nuclear projects. So having set that scene, just need to emphasise, though, that whilst there's an appetite, it is still proving very, very challenging to attract investment to nuclear projects. With over 60 reactors currently in construction, I think half of those are in China, and actually only 4 of those projects are not using Russian or Chinese technology. So the market is still very limited. Nuclear projects typically have very high upfront capital costs and long construction periods. And whilst they have low and stable operational costs, there's a lengthy payback period. And that brings a number of key challenges for investors, which are highlighted, a number of which are highlighted on the slide. A number of those are a little historic, and they can be dealt with by clear and transparent policy and regulation.
Mark, I'm sorry for interrupting you again, but we don't see the challenges. You said that we can see it on the slide, but we don't see the slide.
Yeah, so the slide, the red bubbles and the black bubble are really just outlining some of the challenges with
Can you please put it on the slide, because we see the first page, Ukraine's energy sector.
Still seeing the first page?
Yeah, we still see the first page. That's why I'm confused, as all of us.
I do apologise. I don't know why that's the case. I have moved it on. Let me try again. Let me stop sharing and try start sharing again. Can you now see the second slide?
We're still on the first one.
I don't understand why this is not working. Bear with me. I do apologise. You should now be able to see the second slide.
No, unfortunately, we see the same picture on the screen. But that's all right. Please continue. Yeah, you continue, and we will just move ourselves on our side.
That's fine. Okay, sorry about that. Just set this up again. So yeah, there are a number of key challenges. A number of those are essentially dealt with by clear and transparent regulation, and Ukraine's going alignment with European norms. And you're not able to see the slide, so just mentioning those are things like safety, the need for an understanding of waste management and decommissioning risk, the risk of regulatory and political change. When nuclear is favoured today, but will it be favoured in a number of years' time? And the need for a clear offtake strategy for the project. Also proliferation risk, the risk that essentially commercial nuclear facilities may be used to essentially produce weapons for future wars. And so many of those risks can be dealt with through policy, and they are very much a matter of education for investors who are getting increasingly comfortable with nuclear projects. What's perhaps harder to overcome are essentially challenges around the long-term investment nature of the project and also the cost of finance. The higher upfront cost of these projects and the longer payback periods really doesn't fit typical investment profiles. It just takes too long to make a return on your money, and that makes attracting funding difficult. Consequently, and hence the limited number of projects have usually required substantial government finance or loan guarantees in order to make them viable. And that constrains the volume of future projects. That, however, I think is a developing picture, and I think there are lots of changes to the way these projects are being procured and paid for, which are helping to address some of those problems. So things like changing payment models, where the use of regulatory asset-based models, models essentially where consumers pay throughout the duration of the build of the project for the asset, reducing the need for finance, alongside although that does have, and it should be borne in mind, some real potential regulatory hurdles, particularly in Europe, as well as some unexpected sources of funding, such as the recent £4.5 billion private credit deal between Apollo and EDF on the UK's Hinkley C project prior to construction, are suggesting that there is opportunity, increasing use of export finance, and aligning the investment models with the risk that different categories of investor are prepared to take, are all being explored in order to attract greater funding to the nuclear sector. What is interesting, perhaps, is that the World Bank's partnership with the International Atomic Energy Agency, mentioned previously, has a focus on brownfield renewal rather than new build, which is considered to lock up capital for less time. And that does suit some of UK's strategy, where the intention is very much to extend some of the existing plants. Of all of the risks that the slides you can't see outlines, though, perhaps the most significant and still seen as the major challenge for these projects is construction risk. I'm just going to quickly touch on construction risk. Full-scale new build nuclear plants are very large. They have to be built to a very high quality, and they are complex. And consequently, they are very expensive, and they take a long time to build, especially when you add in the cost of finance we've already talked about. To take an example, the predicted cost of the UK's Hinkley Point C project has increased from £18 billion to some way over £30 billion in 2015 prices. And it's 3 years late. And that is no exception. There are lots and lots of examples of nuclear projects running over budget and being delayed. If nuclear really is to have a renaissance and is to feature a big part of the Ukrainian energy mix in the future, we really need to work out how to deliver these projects to budget and on time. And again, I'm assuming you can't see the third slide, but some of the key pitfalls are outlined on that slide. There are a number of those pitfalls which there is a very strong belief, and indeed example is proven to be the case, that can be significantly mitigated through having a programme of repeat projects. So by replicating Hinkley C, which I just mentioned, for Sizewell C, the next UK's new build nuclear project, they are expecting to achieve a 20% saving. And that's because...
I'm sorry for interrupting you. We're just running out of time. It's been already over 10 minutes. So
no, okay.
That's fine. If you can wrap up...
I'll quickly wrap up. The message very much in terms of mitigating risk in the construction sector is to build fleets of power stations, to replicate the model. Many of the problems come from regulatory interference. There were 7,000 regulatory changes made to the Hinkley project, and come from lack of skill sets, unestablished supply chains. Many of those risks can be achieved by building out fleets. And the final point to remember is that in this sector, it is simply not possible to dump risk of project delivery on the vendors. They either won't accept it, or simply if they do accept it, they won't be able to carry it. So very much a risk management focused contract model and terms is the way forward. That's it from me.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your presentation. And I think there are lots of things to discuss when it comes to nuclear, including SMRs, new technologies, etc. And we will hopefully have another round dedicated to this specific topic. Mr. Kudrytsky, the former head of the Ukrainian TSO, has some comments to make. Please.
Англійською? Краще англійською, окей. So, I will have to leave in a few minutes, so I'll just, try to summarize how I see so-called nuclear renaissance. And in Ukraine, in our parliament, we see that there are some people that call themselves nuclear patriots of Ukraine. So, it's really simple and straightforward. Traditional nuclear 1,000 megawatt unit, 10 billion euros, 10 years. You get a loan of 70% of the cost of that unit. You need to put 30% equity to it. You need to have interest rate about 6% on euro annually. These are real and one of the best, frankly, terms which you can find on the financial market to finance your project. So this 1,000 megawatt unit would cost you to service your debt every year. Let's say you have even 15 years loan. It will cost you around 350 to 400 million euros a year for repayment. It will cost you 400 million euros in interest. So in the end of the day, you will land somewhere at 900 million to 1 billion euro a year to service the debt for this unit. And this unit will produce to you around 6 million megawatt hours a year, given the capacity factor of 78–80%. So for each megawatt hour that you produce, you would have to allocate at least 135 euro in your price for repayment of the loan itself, for servicing your debt. This is 135 euro only for servicing the debt. Then you add to that the previously mentioned by me, this 1.7 hryvnia per kilowatt hour of cost of production, because you need 3,000 people at the station, you need nuclear fuel, you need spare parts. You land at something like 160 euros for the base load. So 160 euros for the base load is around 8,000 hryvnia per megawatt hour for the industry. Is it good, Mr. Kalenkov? So we need to forget about it, okay? We need to forget about it. This is first. Second, unless you have like 50-year loan at 1% interest rate annually, forget about it. Then second thing, SMR. I love this technology. I heard that it could cost like 3 billion instead of 10. When it's commercialized and ready, call me. Thank you very much. I need to leave now. Goodbye.
Thank you, Володимир. Дуже дякую за коментарі і за все, що ти робиш.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Thank you, Volodymyr, for everything that you do. So do we have Oleksiy Orgely with us? No, not yet. So I would like to ask our wonderful speakers to share their comments. So DTAC and representative of the consumers. So what do you think about it? I think that when we have this factor of nuclear terrorism, what happened in Zaporizhzhia, NPP, and we have the enemy who will not disappear. So talking in these conditions about building a new nuclear power plants, I think that means that we are not learning from our experience, and we still cannot protect our objects of nuclear energy. And the Minister of Energy said that there were around 500 attacks with the drones and missiles in the near vicinity of nuclear power plants in Ukraine. So I think that this discussion, without taking into account the security component, it just cannot happen. It means that we are not learning from our experience. But I would like to hear you.
Yes, security definitely, but also it's about energy mix. When we talk about nuclear energy, we are moving towards Europe. We already sell a lot of our goods to Europe. And for us, it's very important to move to green steel. Green steel is green energy, but nuclear energy is not green yet, but it is considered that nuclear energy can be green. Otherwise, it will not be competitive in comparison to other countries. And CBAM, so this mechanism will not allow them to even out the competition with Turkey, China, and other global south countries. So first, I think that they will consider nuclear energy. If this movement towards green energy is on global level, maybe it will increase prices for the whole market, and it will make nuclear energy more competitive. If there is demand for green steel and the consumers are paid benefits for green steel, but it's not going to happen right now. If we talk about SMR, it is being promoted by American Ministry and State Department on Energy. We as industry, we are participating, but it's not about long term, it's about futuristic vision. I think it will happen, but we are talking 10, 15 years, or who knows how long. And we need to focus on the assets that we already have. And I hope that nuclear generation is going to be put partly into green generation, and then we will show this mix in a fair way, and we will be able to enter European Union as a fair play. Yes, it's already CO2 neutral, so the first step has been made. So I would like to hear you, Mr. Dmytro, as the comments of what has been presented from the British lawyer. So what's your opinion? If we talk about long term, we understand that there are possible long-term SMR projects. We don't have project for SMR at the moment, but we are, as everyone, following the progress in this area. We need to analyze it to look when it is commercially attractive. So this area has chances. About the nuclear energy as we have it now, we need to be frank. We need to support our assets that we already have. We need to make them renewable and to use them properly. If we talk about future construction, as Volodymyr said correctly, it will depend a lot on the cost of construction, and we heard what it is. Yes, we will be happy to go and visit the first SMR, and we'll be happy to listen to this success story, but I don't think it's going to happen in the nearest future. It's a beautiful fairy tale which will hopefully become true. Now we have Alexei Orzhel online, head of Kyiv Office Energy Community Secretariat at the Ministry of Energy and Environment, and this is our active participant if it comes to energy reforms. And we have a very simple question. We started our panel about which reforms are necessary for different players of this market. You, as a representative of the Secretariat of Energy Community, so what obstacles do you see that exist now in Ukraine on Ukraine energy market, where we as a country, where we couldn't or wouldn't do our whole housework, and what work needs to be done if we are talking about building an agenda for the new cabinet of ministers, for the parliament, for the nearest 6-12 months. So let's talk short term, what gaps there are and what we need to do. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be with you. Unfortunately, I couldn't join you offline, but I wanted to join you. I've heard quite a lot of interesting thoughts. I had a very short phone call about the possibility of development of energy sector if we talk about new consumers. Because when we talk about metal industry, but also we will potentially have new consumers, data centers, electric cars, and so on. And we came to the logic that in order to build new capacities for new consumers, we probably need a new generation. And we need new generation in terms of war. It has to be distributed, which is secured from the risk of the war. But also we came to a different conclusion that now on our agenda we should have reforms, and these reforms are defined by our European colleagues and Energy Community Secretariat. We also set them as priority, and we came to conclusion that if our security situation is what it is for now, so then we need to look at the united market with Europe and energy market, and maybe build a trans-border grid and networks, and which can help and produce sustainability for future consumers as well. Why we need all of this? If we go back to our Ukraine facility, and the task of this plan is to ensure a higher level European integration and focusing on the most important reforms for Ukraine.
Market coupling – це як от об'єднання сенсу І, це просто революційні зміни, які можливі в перспективі для України. І Урсула фон дер Ляєн відкрила насправді двері для України і сказала, що Україну чекають у першому кварталі 2027 року в рамках об'єднання ринку електричної енергії. Насправді, ще раз я хочу підтвердити, що такі інших можливостей для розвитку України в умовах, які ми маємо сьогодні, насправді не переглядаються. Якщо ми хочемо мати більшу ліквідність, можливість будувати нову генерацію, нові мережі, і знов-таки знайти нову генерацію, можливо, десь на сусідніх ринках, це об'єднання ринків. Якщо говоримо, що ми не доробили, ми згідно плану графіку імплементації, у нас є 3 законопроекти, які мають бути впроваджені до кінця цього року, відповідно до плану, і відповідно буде забезпечено і фінансування України в рамках цього плану. Перший дуже важливий і дуже комплексний законопроект, про який ведеться розмова. Насправді, от тільки на минулому тижні почалася активна діяльність з української сторони.
Ukraine became very active around this draft law. This is so-called law on electricity integration package. It's about market coupling. It's not just market coupling. It also introduces some norms and regulations so that our market using this according to the same rules. But the deadline for this draft law is third quarter of this year. But it has already passed the first reading, but there are a few very important comments which are necessary for implementation of this draft law, which we still need to do during the third quarter. And the very important message here that I would like to deliver, and that is a message that is very common at the moment, it's not about negotiation on how we are going to implement this draft law. It's
повністю відповідає європейському законодавству. Тут нема можливості так якось написати, ось так написати, а потім говорити, що ми ось отак от розглядаємо цю норму закону. Ні, це буде повноцінна оцінка на повну імплементацію європейського законодавства, а після цієї оцінки буде відповідно висновок, чи він відповідає чи ні, і як результат виконання плану Ukraine Facility. Але знов-таки повертаємося до того, що це, по-перше, потрібно в цих умовах, в яких ми зараз перебуває Україна, саме для України, тому що об'єднання ринків – це знов-таки більша ліквідність, можливість залучення інвестицій, можливість довгострокових підписань договорів PPA, ф'ючерсів, інших інструментів, які би дозволили збалансувати, зокрема, і для споживачів, і для генерації свої пакети продажів, пакети купівлі електричної енергії, які би максимально сприяли якоїсь стабілізації, і оті от коливання на ринку електричної енергії, які на сьогодні є, були б не такими критичними, які ми сьогодні бачимо. Це перший аспект. Другий аспект, другий законопроект, який дуже важливо нам прийняти, і він також лежить ще в цьому році до прийняття, і знов-таки він сьогодні згадувався. Це про забезпечення незалежності регулятора і покращення його діяльності. На минулому тижні це було проговорено знов-таки публічно на рівні робочої групи Верховної Ради. І є позиція європейської сторони про те, що треба доопрацювати певні елементи як в самому тексті законопроекту щодо покращення роботи регулятора, так і до питання відбору членів енергетичного регулятора. Зокрема, знов-таки це було озвучено на минулому тижні, є відповідний лист, про якому говориться, що, наприклад, такі інструменти, які були задіяні як по відбору на керівника БЕП, можуть бути використані і для відбору для членів комісії НКРЄКП. Тому набагато більша участь європейських учасників, більше голосів, більше вплив на відповідне прийняття рішення. Наскільки я розумію, є певна реакція з української сторони, вони там її знов-таки розглядають як додатковий фактор, який з'явився нещодавно, але я зі своєї сторони можу сказати, що це знов-таки виходячи з аналізу тих процесів, які по відбору членів, які були раніше, і можливо сказати про те, що це знов-таки на покращення ситуації для того, щоб дійсно залучити незалежних, професійних, якісні кадри в регулятор, і щоб у нас ніколи не з'явилося ніяких, скажімо так, таких сумнівів, які звучали і сьогодні на конференції щодо регулятора. Знов-таки, у нас є поточна ситуація, ми маємо якось коригувати, але законопроект направлений на те, щоб покращити ситуацію в майбутньому, щоб була довір до регулятора, як ми говорили, що це той рефері, який має бути зараз на полі, і для того, щоб його максимально, скажімо так, покращити в тих умовах, яких ми є і на майбутнє, то є відповідний законопроект, який також має бути прийнятий в умовах Ukraine Facility. І це знову-таки пов'язано з фінансуванням. І останній законопроект, який також має покращити ситуацію на ринку електричної енергії, це вимога по спрощенню приєднання будівництва нових об'єктів, це певні елементи нової директиви по відновленим джерелам тарифів, про те, що такі об'єкти відновленої енергетики в зонах, там, де передбачено саме активне розвиток ВДЕ, які визначені державою, там відповідно мають бути скорочені процедури і процеси на приєднання, і спрощено це все. Як результат, це має бути загальновідомо, і це також дає певний додатковий стимул розвитку об'єктів розподіленої генерації, це зелена генерація, які на сьогодні дуже сильно
generation,
потрібно.
which is so
Тому оці
necessary now.
три елементи
So these
дуже
three draft
з точки зору
laws
реформ, які
from
треба виконати ще до
reform
кінця року.
perspective
Звичайно, у нас
are
багато
very
інших
important,
викликів,
and we
але
need to do it by
знов-таки
the end of
завдання
the
навіть до кінця
year.
року
Of
дуже
course, we have
амбітні
many
і
challenges, but
насправді
even
зв'язані
these
з
three draft
планом
laws,
Ukraine Facility.
that's very
Якщо
ambitious
ще
and connected to
додати
Ukraine
ще один вимір,
facility.
про який хотів
And
говорити,
if I add
ми дуже
another
багато
dimension that we
говорили,
would like to
чи
discuss,
дорога, чи дешева
we
електрична
discussed
енергія.
whether
Я насправді би
electricity
навів ще один
is
аспект
cheap
роботи
or
секретаріату
expensive.
енергетичного
I would like to
співтовариства.
add about
Сьогодні ми
another
оперуємо
aspect of
фондом
the
енергетичної підтримки. Це десь порядку до 1,5
our
мільярда євро
organization.
підтримки.
So we are working now on the
Величезна там
support.
частина цього всього
5 billion
вже розподілена
euros of
і є
support.
безпосередньо
It's all
постачання
allocated.
обладнання, критично важливого обладнання, яке
We
необхідно
talk
енергетичним
about supply
компаніям.
of
Кожен день
critical equipment
відбувається ця
needed for
робота,
the energy
оцінюються
companies.
запити,
So we do
але
this work every
говорити
day and
знов-таки
we look at requests.
об'єктивно цих
But
грошей
objectively
не вистачає.
speaking,
Не вистачає на
money is
відновлення,
lacking. Money
не
is
вистачає на
lacking for
покриття тих
the
запитів, які вже
recovery.
опрацьовані в
Money
рамках
is lacking
процедури
to
Міністерством
cover the
енергетики України.
requests which
І насправді це
were
означає,
already
що і в
reviewed
системі не
by
вистачає
the
грошей.
ministry,
Не
and it
вистачає для
means
того, щоб
that
хоча б
money is lacking
відновитися
in
до
the
стану,
system at least to
скажімо так, до
recover
війни.
to
І
the
багато іншого
pre-war
треба
condition.
нового побудувати.
And a
І
lot
в цьому
of
аспекті
things need to
говорити
be
про те,
built,
що
I
у
mean,
нас
like
є
new
можливість
objects.
певна для того, щоб була
So,
дешевша або дорожча електрична енергія.
speaking
Так, має визначати ринок.
about
Так, має бути
like
відповідна
more or less
підтримка. І дуже треба
expensive energy, well, yes,
дякувати
of course,
донорам,
we
які допомагають фонду
have the
підтримки
market and we
енергетики
are grateful
і
to the
допомагають
donors which
Україні. А з іншої сторони, ми маємо розуміти, що
fund
з однієї
to
сторони
support the
і
energy
оці
sector,
технології,
but we need to
які на сьогодні
understand
нам
that
дозволяють хоч
the
якось
technologies
дивитися
which
перспективу на
allow
зниження
us
електричної енергії, це
to
поєднання ВДЄ та
the
нових
cost of energy
потужностей
and
батарейок, які
combine
досить серйозно,
renewable energy sources
скажімо так,
and
кардинально
other sources
змінили
such as
ціну
batteries,
на оцей мікс
which
ВДЄ плюс батарейка,
change
яке дає
the price of the
певну
mix,
позитивну перспективу у майбутнє. З іншої сторони, ми знов-таки дивимося на
So that is one thing. On the other hand, we are looking at the next heating season with a certain concerns because we are afraid that energy infrastructure will be attacked again and new funding will be needed for recovery. So to sum it up, I can say that we want to underline within our role as the Energy Community Secretariat that Ukraine has to be part of the European energy markets. We need to use this opportunity. We need to approve relevant draft laws, and it will mean a big opportunity for Ukraine in these conditions. It will improve the situation. It will mean long-term contracts, I mean, cross-border supply, and it will give some more tools to the electricity market. And there are tasks to be performed now. Of course, there are challenges which the electricity sector is facing, and we need to thank people who work in the energy sector recovering and rebuilding the energy objects. Thank you, Oleksiy. The topic of integration with the European markets is of great importance, especially for big consumers in Ukraine. And I hope that we actually have discussed it with Alexander, that it is important to be able to use the tools which are available, even if there is no legal framework for big Ukrainian consumers to go to the European markets. And I think that Ukrainian producers will support me that real competition will only be the driver of the market, and DTech Energy, I'm sure, would support such initiatives. So if we have any questions from the audience, let us ask those questions. Thank you. I have a question to Alexander. My name is Maxim. I'm
director of an engineering company. So I have a question to Alexander and Dmytro. Sorry, to Alexander. So looking at the cost of energy and how important it is for the metallurgy sector, so do you think about building your own generation capacities using the secondary mechanisms of production? I think that it is possible. And now there are big investments going to solar generation, wind mills. And we need to understand that it just allows not to have a catastrophe when there is no energy supply. But I don't think that it will resolve the problem totally. I know that cement producers, they have made quite a big progress. And I think that using technological production gas is also one of the topics and one of the themes that companies and enterprises will look at. Now there should be all opportunities used for decentralization and diversification of energy supply, because unfortunately I do not know when we will have a stable situation in terms of security in Ukraine. And meanwhile we need to use all the opportunities available to us. Also the gas that we can get from the technological process. How economically viable it is, we need to see on a case-by-case basis. But as I said, enterprises such as Metinvest, they are investing in gas generation and in solar energy as well. Any other questions? Yeah, I have a question to Dmytro. If we substitute, for example, coal with gas generation on the same sites, probably there should be big steam and gas blocks. However, we need to remember about the security situation and about the risk of attacks. So protecting such big objects would be very expensive. So does it make sense to build gas generation capacities, or should we use smaller blocks for more distribution? Well, now we are working on design of different projects. So we have this open cycle and closed cycle capacities. So first we can use open and then use closed generation. And when we're talking about sites, we can talk about territories of power plants where some infrastructure is already available. So some capacities that can already be used. So for gas production, we already have some project designs on how to protect and ensure security of those objects. But now we are looking at projects and we are making decisions on a case-by-case basis. Based on the security situation as well. But unfortunately now we understand that we are investing money in the current objects and unfortunately we cannot say that some objects are secure and protected like 100%. Yeah, well, that is not possible to just physically protect and ensure 100% protection. Torsten?
I'm not so sure about impossibility of defending or protecting such installations because we are involved with Kiev Teploenergo or Kiev Energo, and they are building, let's say, a gas turbine 50 megawatt, and that is probably the maximum you can physically protect. If you go bigger, then probably that's not possible. So if you go for, let's say, smaller generation, and you compartmentalize it, so the turbine is in a different building than the other parts, etc., probably you can do it, but of course it comes at a price.
Absolutely, Torsten. I totally agree with you. And the security-related risks factors are not going to disappear even if the war ends tomorrow. I think we have to be more rigorous when it comes to actually thinking about the strategies of protecting critical infrastructure, energy critical infrastructure. And I think it's hard time to do it together. And we hope, from my experience of advocating in Europe, meeting with representatives of NATO, all of them were saying, and the members of European Parliament, all of those projects of building protection for the assets of the critical infrastructure will require extra financing that will be at the cost for the consumers. And no one is ready yet to... You are who? European Commission? Because I think it should be a joint project. It cannot be like all of us were doing something on our own. It's great, it's competition, it's about technological some developments, innovations, but I think if it's going to be a policy that will be like a foundation for all of the European Union countries, including Ukraine, then it will be much easier to structure the financing, for example, that is required for the assets in Ukraine, for the assets in Poland, in Spain, wherever. But we have to have the common policy on that.
I fully agree, but we have a very good starting point. We have the platform that is managed by the Energy Community Secretariat. So we have experience on what is feasible, how much does it cost to provide physical protection, what level of protection makes sense. So for instance, we have come to the conclusion that level 2 protection makes sense, level 3 is probably not feasible. So we have a set of experience which we jointly developed unfortunately over the last 3 years, which we should use, but we should put it into a policy and not just say, well, look, the international donors with this 1.5 billion euros have their rules and we have other rules. That doesn't make sense.
Exactly. So my question to you, just a second. How can we, Ukraine, help you to put it into European policies? How to make it a policy based on our own experience? That's my first question. And the second to Alexei, from what I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, you have a stock of equipment for the primarily electricity-related assets, right? It's not related to, for example, gas infrastructure. So or you have the full, because for that particular issue is not clear for me. If you can clarify it, Alexei, I would really appreciate that.
No, we have a full-scale equipment, and we are also working with gas supply companies, and we are even working on bordering this infrastructure. We are providing electricity gas turbines for the gas transmission system operator. So we are making, but it's not in accordance to the forced energy package, but we are making electricity producer from the gas transmission system operator. I hope they will divide these activities. But what I just want to mention, it is important that we have already some specific equipment, some typical equipment that should be protected. But frankly saying, we are not considering it when it goes through the procedure of Ministry of Energy when approving some requests from the energy companies. In case we are speaking about cogeneration units, and in case we are speaking about gas turbine units, I believe we can somehow go into the typical defense solutions that can protect them because, well, frankly, instead, after supplying really good General Electric cogeneration units, in some period of time, we have to reinstall them after the repairing works, because it was after the attacks of drones, it should be repaired. So this is a problem, and I believe it should be now like a typical approach when we are having such a, let's say, not big scale, but typical middle and small scale equipment. It should work like that.
Yeah, thank you. Overall, I think we all will be in agreement that it shouldn't be the energy generating companies who should think about how to protect their assets, right? It should be a policy, and the policy, I hope, sooner rather than later, will be just a common policy for all that kind of type of assets throughout the whole European Union. And that's the first, and so the financial burden should not be on them. And it's a matter of cooperation of the energy community overall, not necessarily the Secretariat, but just the energy community together with NATO, in order to be able to put together a comprehensive defense strategy and implementing them for such assets. Because what we've seen with sabotage for the cables is just the beginning. What we've seen with the drones attacks on Poland is just the beginning. European, actually, energy sector and grid especially is much more vulnerable than Ukrainian, because we had that extra capacity, thank God, that was left from the Soviet times. European our partners are not prepared, unfortunately. Any other, може якісь ще думки?
Any other final thoughts, final comments, or any more questions?
Якщо можна, останнє.
I would like to comment.
Якраз останнє для того, щоб згадати про фінансові інструменти. Насправді ми зараз ведемо перемовини з донорами і запрошуємо всіх до цих перемовин. У нас є вже підписаний меморандум з Укренерго на балансуючі потужності. Це той інструмент, про який міг би працювати. Механізм деріскінга в умовах війни, коли насправді пропонується можливість відновлення об'єктів або обладнання генерації за рахунок, відповідно, рахунку секретаріату енергетичного співтовариства, який працює в рамках фонду підтримки енергетики, тобто це можливість, якщо дійсно був факт влучання терористичної атаки Росії на об'єкти генерації, то тоді ці гроші відміняються і йдуть на те, щоб купити обладнання для того, щоб відновити цей об'єкт генерації. Ми віримо, що такий інструмент може залучити набагато більше інвестицій. Насправді це, коли ми говоримо, що може бути генерація на рівні споживача, ми також можемо дивитися в цю сторону, якщо у нас будуть можливості від донорів, які вони нам нададуть. Тобто, якщо дуже просто, це може бути дуже спрощено, тому що це escrow рахунок, з якого відпускаються гроші на те, щоб відновити пошкодження або зруйноване обладнання терористичною атакою Росії, яким оперує секретаріат після верифікації того, що було відповідно знищене обладнання. Ми віримо, що у такого підходу є певний мультиплікатор, що одне євро залучено донорського фінансування може залучити 3-4 євро реального приватного капіталу в такому напрямку. Тому також в цьому аспекті робота ведеться, і тут запрошуємо донорів до того, щоб долучитися до цієї ініціативи.
Олексій, does it include heat generation?
На даному аспекті ми визначилися, що це та генерація, яку першочергово потрібна для системи, це балансуючі потужності, це допоміжні послуги і аукціони, які сьогодні пропонуються Укренерго. Але якщо у нас буде більше можливість зі сторони донорів, я думаю, що ми можемо додатково включати ще більше, покривати цією парасолькою, амбрелою різні варіанти генерації. І не тільки
cover different types of generation, but not only generation, distribution, and transportation. We have a question from the audience, but Mr. Alexander, you want to comment something? No, question from the audience is fine. Dear colleagues, my name is Volodymyr Litvinov. What I never heard during these two panels, some unified sources, because we talked separately about different sources, but if we talk about from the consumer side, if we talk about residential buildings, what I heard that, oh yeah, like they just want free energy and they feel that we owe them something. But I think I see big potential for all markets. If you talk about nuclear and about energy for big consumers, we can free up a lot of energy and put it back to the market, to the free market, and we can decrease prices. And it would be good because we talk about 400 megawatts, but in Kiev, the energy boilers, they can be easily replaced with centralized supply systems, and if we do not replace it, then we can regulate it. If you look at other cities, Zaporizhzhia, Dnipro, Ternopil, Khmelnytsky, there is a huge potential when we how we can work on the consumer side, and we can free up this capacity and the possibility of the manure, and also rebalancing the market of heat and gas, because on the one hand, low prices, and which means that it's hard to modernize. On the other hand, we have a huge underused potential, because residential buildings can decrease gas consumption by 20% just when we regulate, modernize, small modernization of engineering systems, and also about electricity. If we talk about peak hours of consumption, in order to heat up water that can be heated up by other means. And again, if we talk about this solar system that have already been installed on the level of homeowners association, private buildings, and small storages that are impossible to destroy if there are many of them, and we can create the possibility to engage them into the market as regulated of like the system of virtual power station. And if you have any project in this direction, in this field, I will be happy to listen about them. And if you are not working in this direction, maybe it will give you some seed for thoughts. And after half a year or year, we can use this potential. And we talked about investment, about nuclear reactors, so we cannot work there. But here, investments are so much cheaper if we calculate this added free capacity or added free energy. I think we need a separate panel, discussion panel, so we need to bring more people from consumers rather than generation, because we have only one key speaker from consumers. But then consumers, they're capable, they have ideas, either which they already implemented or want to implement, and we can show to everyone how we can decrease consumption and the possibility to where we can show the possibility of energy efficiency. This is definitely a separate topic, and I think that we will have a separate discussion around that, because it is all one big system and we all are dependent on each other. And our input on every part of this chain is critical for our system to be stable, effective, competitive, and overall for prices to be adequate. Mr. Alexei, do you have any thoughts to share, or probably we should wrap up and final comments? Yes, I agree that we should have a separate panel, and is stimulated by Germany, not only by Ukraine. For example, you can install batteries and through home accumulating capacity, you can decrease significantly the peak consumption. It works in Germany, and it is definitely necessary for Ukraine. Yes, I can say that in my residential building, that's the way we selected. Definitely separate discussion. Mr. Alexander, Mr. Dmitro, final remarks. Yes, I would like to agree with Alexei, representative of consumer, and I am from the most energy-consuming sector. We definitely support competitiveness and independence. The more we have of it, the better. There are different mechanisms that they can guarantee the independence of those people who work in these institutions. Because when we talk about prices, it's not about absolute numbers, whether they're high or not. Everything is relative. Comparative to our competition. And I'm not talking about Russia, that Russia has 10 times lower prices than us. But they move this to Turkey, China, and we have competition from those countries. And these goods come to Ukraine and European markets. But when we compete with European markets, ArcelorMittal, they make a decision to leave Poland, but to stay in France. One of the factors of the decision, that's energy price. Maybe that's not the only factor, but it is a key factor. And if we can try to use mechanism and to protect ourselves from Russia or China, but here inside European Union, we need to create competitive price because right now ArcelorMittal works as a charity project in Ukraine, and they cannot do it for many years. I would like to say that more than $1 billion the enterprise invested in order to support the work of this enterprise in Ukraine. It's not sustainable. We need to think long term. And as I said, that there are certain mechanisms, and we want to present it to our government. And I hope that those steps that Alexei presented will help, and also some steps that we are offering as well. Mr. Dmitro, thank you very much. I want to thank all the colleagues. We as producers, I can say that in our materials we are supporting market coupling and unifying with energy system of Europe, and we believe that this and all the different ways that colleagues offer it will lead to transformation of our sector, and it will bring additional investment. To sum up, Ukraine has a lot to do. We have a lot of homework. And when we were adopting the law on energy, gas about regulator, everybody had high expectations. Everybody thought that just a little bit, and Ukraine will have real markets and real independent regulator, that referee that can balance the interests of all players. Obviously, we still have a lot to do. I want to thank you all for this discussion, because common vision cannot be built in vacuum only when we have discussions like this, especially the discussion where we have opposite sides, if I can call you this way. And thank you very much for your professional comments. I want to thank you for sharing your opinions, your visions. It's just the beginning, and I hope that we will continue using maybe different formats, but we all understand that success of Ukraine today, tomorrow, during reconstruction and recovery will depend on whether we on the creating the possibilities for generation, consumers and society, whether they can feel that the rules of the games are fair. We need competitive advantage for Ukraine, the way how we had it before the full-scale invasion. Thank you very much for participating. Have a safe day.